Hi everybody, this is Francisco Gil-White for Arut Tov and Management of Reality in this joint program series. And today we have with us Mordechai Kedar, who is, thank you very much for joining us, Mordechai.
Pleasure, mate.
Mordechai Kedar is very famous here in Israel and also outside of Israel as a great expert on Arab culture in different countries, and also a great expert on Islam, on the traditional legal aspect and also cultural and religious aspects of Islam. And Mordechai Kedar is also well known for certain ideas he has put forth on how some kind of solution can be found, of course, once the war ends, but how some kind of solution could be found for the Arab-Palestinian population, as it is called, that has been living in conflict with the Jewish state. And that's the first thing I would like to ask you about, Mordechai, if I may. So the solution you've put forth is called the Emirates solution, and I would like for you to explain to our audience what this solution entails. What is an emirate? Why do you think this has a better chance of working than other proposals, and so forth?
Yeah.
Because you know what? People always ask me, but what is Israel supposed to do, right? So Israel will win the war, hopefully, but then what is Israel supposed to do?
Well, for this we have to understand the core problems, not only with the Palestinians, but also with the whole Middle East. The states of the Middle East are divided roughly to two kinds of states. One is the failing states, and the other one is the successful states. The failing states are Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Sudan, Yemen, Libya, more or less. Mm-hmm. The successful one are Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, the Sultanate of Oman, Saudi Arabia, and the 7 Emirates which are united, the United Arab Emirates. Mm-hmm. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, and so forth. These are the successful states.
What does it mean, successful?
Normal life, normal economy. People feel safe in the street. State functioning. This is what I mean by successful state.
Okay.
While failing states are Syria. You go out from home, you never know if you come home.
They have civil war.
Civil war, constant war as we have now, and others as well. So the question is, why are these failures, and why are these successes? Okay. What is the element which makes this a failure and this success? People tend to think that the oil, because in the Gulf there is oil. But it's not correct, because Dubai, for example, has no oil and no gas. Maybe 1 or 2% of the GDP is based on oil and gas. And Dubai is a heaven on earth. Iraq and Libya are full of oil, and they are hell on earth, in spite of the oil. So evidently it's not the oil. So what is the element which makes this into success? And this, the answer is the culture. Culture. What do I mean? All the failing states are conglomerates of ethnic groups. Let's say in Syria you have Arabs, you have Turkmens, you have Armenians, and you have 4 religions in Syria: Muslims, Christians, Druze and Alawites. You have sects like Shia, Sunnah, and all kinds of denominations that are divided inside. Iraq has 10 religions, 76 tribes or clans, the population. 4 ethnic groups: Kurds, Arabs, by the way, Kurds in Syria as well, and Persians and Turkmens, and sects, who knows how many. And the failure of the modern state, Iraq, Syria, is that the state tried to replace the traditional loyalties of the people to the ethnic group or to the tribal group or the religious or the sectarian group, and to become all galvanized under the Iraqi idea, modern idea. Adopt the flag and the national anthem, and everybody will be Iraqi and sing Kumbaya around the fire. And this has failed. This failed. In Syria, in Lebanon, it failed in Iraq, it failed in Sudan, as you see today, a civil war, in Yemen, in Libya. While the successful states, each and every one is one group, one clan. Kuwait belongs to a clan named Al is family, Al Sabah. Qatar belongs to Al Thani. Dubai belongs to Al Maktoum. Abu Dhabi belongs to Al Nahyan. Saudi Arabia belongs to Al Saud. This is the solution. If you have one group as the state, the owners of the state, the rulers of the state, the group rules itself. It's like a nation state, small nation state, legitimate in the eyes of the citizens, functioning. Nobody fights anyone. And they all cooperate for the good of everybody. While in the conglomerates, like Iraq and Syria, the other is the enemy. Means the other citizen who belongs to another clan, to another ethnic group, like Kurds, Arabs, another religion, like Yazidis in Iraq, or another sect, Sunni, Shia, and so forth. And they fight each other constantly. So in spite of the oil, Iraq is a failure because of the inner feuds and struggles, because of so many groups, while in the Gulf, they are steady society, stable society, functioning society. Therefore, there is a good functioning political arena. And on this, you can build skyscrapers. If you have oil like Abu Dhabi, use the oil. If you don't have oil, you make business like Dubai. And this is how it works. And this is the means that whenever you follow the culture of the Middle East, which is tribal culture, you get a good state. What I think that since what the so-called Palestinian people are very tribal, if you tell me the name of somebody, I'll tell you where he lives. Because, for example, if his name is Jabri, or Abu Snena, or Kawasme, or Nache, or Tamimi, he lives in Hebron. If his name is Masri, or Tukan, or Shaka, he will live in Shem, in Nablus. If his name is Karmi, he will live in Tulkarem. If his name is Arikat, he will live in Jericho. And this is how it works, because every clan lives in its own compound.
Okay.
And this is part of the tribalism of the Middle East. Means, what I want is to establish emirates in each and every one of the cities of Judea and Samaria, because this society is very tribal. Let them govern themselves. Why should we why did the left bring these criminals from Tunisia, like Arafat, to govern the people? He was totally illegitimate because he was born in Egypt, Arafat. And everybody looked at him as, they said, Mush Minna, not from us. Abu Mazen is less, because Abu Mazen was born in the north, in Tzfat. He is not one of us. He's not one of our clan, not one of our tribe, not one of our town. Why do we need him? Only because the Israelis brought him to control us? Totally illegitimate, totally unacceptable, totally rejected by the population.
Also criminals. These people that they brought to run Arab life inside Israel, they're criminals.
In order to become legitimate, they start distributing money to all kinds of friends and allies in order to buy people. So they are criminals. And also they pay for slay.
Right, they pay to kill.
In order to get legitimacy, which they don't have, because they are not from us.
Well, that's quite a comment on Arab culture, if paying people to kill Jews is what brings you legitimacy.
Right.
That's quite a comment on Arab culture.
Definitely. So what I mean is, instead of building this illegitimate scheme, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, what we should have done is to go to the local clans of each and every one of the towns, have an emirate.
But this would mean that the biggest, the largest form of government would be the city government then? Is that what it means?
Yeah, the sheikhs, the old people who will constitute a majlis, means like a parliament. The officials will be nominated by them, and they will be the source of legitimacy. The Majlis.
But you're imagining then that in each Arab-Palestinian town there would be one family that is the government. Is that how you think?
Either one family, like Arikat in Jericho, or a group of families who have
who are agreed.
Who have a court which sits almost every day to solve problems between the clans.
Okay.
A clannish court. That's what they call mahkama ashairiyya in Arabic. And they know very well how to solve problems. And they have their own laws, and they have their own traditions. And this is what is legitimate in these societies.
Okay, why do you
try to run an Arab society on or by using Western ideas like communism, socialism, democracy, all these things are rejected. Just like if you want to operate your phone, which uses Android, by the operating system of iPhone. It doesn't work.
Right.
The Western ideas failed in the Middle East totally.
That's an interesting metaphor. Okay, so in other words, your proposal would be, after an Israeli victory, the Arab Palestinians in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, if they want to remain, then they should. Your idea is they should have autonomous government based on this Emirates idea that the strongest family or the most prestigious family. I'm not exactly sure how it would work.
They know how to work.
But right, they'll work it out. But they'll have local power at the city level. Right. But no larger than the city level.
Right.
Right? And they would not be citizens of Israel. Is that correct?
They would not be citizens of Israel.
They would be citizens of these Emirates.
Of the Emirates, while Israel will be from the river to the sea.
Okay. So Israel retains control of all the borders.
You know this big slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Right.
Israel will be free, of course.
Right.
And they will be like Rome. You have the Vatican in Rome.
Right, I see.
Like Luxembourg.
So autonomous, but not controlling the borders.
Autonomous and even independent. And let them have a seat in the UN.
Okay.
Everything works with Israel with agreements. And there are voices already in these towns which want this solution.
In other words, people from the Arab-Palestinian population agreeing with this proposal.
Definitely.
I see.
Definitely, especially recently, because of the release of the terrorists from the Israeli jails because of the...
They didn't want that to happen?
Look, today, now there is a competition between the PA and Hamas.
I see.
Because those hundreds of kills which Israel released because of the agreement with Hamas, actually are planning to take the Judea and Samaria over.
I see.
As they took Gaza in 2007.
Okay.
And this way the PA will turn into a state which will turn into Hamastan. And don't forget that in 2006 already, as early as that, Hamas won the elections to the Legislative Council of the PA. And it can repeat itself.
Okay, so but do you believe that the Palestinian Authority is less bad than Hamas?
No, they are both bad.
Okay, so why does it matter if Hamas dethrones the PA?
And now the clans which hate the PA, and they hate Hamas as well, they want to take the lead in order to...
And kick them out.
To kick both. The
out.
PA and Hamas.
So, in other words, you believe that if the Israeli government were to commit itself to the Emirates solution, it would have the support of the clans against these terrorist organizations?
Definitely, and they will join the Abraham Accords.
Okay,
the clannish Emirates will join the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates in the Gulf, in the Abraham Accords.
Okay. May I push against your idea to see how you respond? It seems to me that you are defining a successful Arab state in terms of the variables of strong government and civil war. So if...
Stability, good economy.
Exactly.
And a government which is committed to the people.
Right, but that's the part I want to push back on, right? Because I think that if you say Qatar and United Arab Emirates are, to pick two examples, are successful Arab states, or Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, it seems to me the counter-argument would be, well, they're successful in the sense that they have a strong central government and they have avoided civil war. This is true. And they have successful economies. That's also true. There's economic growth going on, a lot of money coming in. Definitely true. However, to say that they're committed to the people, I think is a stretch, because let's take Qatar, for example. So in Qatar, 94% of the economically active population are actually foreigners, and the overwhelming majority of those foreigners are slaves, as you well know.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound to me like from at least from a Western Judeo-Christian democratic perspective, to call that a successful state is kind of horrible, because then we would say that Nazi Germany was a successful state, right? So I think Qatar is the international financier for anti-Semitic jihadi terrorism. They are the patrons of Hamas. They have something like 2 million slaves in their country who are daily abused physically and sexually. So I don't want to call that a successful state. And if that's your model of a successful state, and that's what you want for the Arab Palestinians, my worry would be that if the Arab Palestinians are allowed to govern themselves, as you were proposing, they will quickly become like Qatar, and then they're a danger to the Israelis.
I'm fully aware of it, and actually 12 years ago, I wrote a whole article, it is in English, Know Thine Enemy, about Qatar.
I see.
Already 12 years. Today, people start talking about Qatar as the danger. I discovered it already 12 years ago.
Good, let's go. So why wouldn't this happen in...
This, I cannot deny, it can happen. However, Qatar could have been tamed if Qatar was singled as a country which supports terror. The problem is that Qatar is with the Iranians. Qatar, as you know, was under siege by the Saudis and the Emiratis and the others in the Gulf for 4 years, between 2014 and 19.
Not under siege, they were blockaded. They were
Okay.
there were sanctions against
Sanctions.
them.
And only thanks to Iran, Qatar succeeded to import food, to feed the people. A country which supports terror can be dealt with.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the world doesn't deal with Qatar, because Qatar succeeded to buy too many people in the world, politicians, media people, academicians, and this is the problem with Qatar. Yet, you mentioned the slavery. Yes, Qatar, and you know what, not only Qatar, there are many others, foreign workers who are treated not in a proper way. Saudi Arabia and others in other countries. Not even one of them came to these countries to work by force.
Who are we talking about now?
The Emirates, Qatar.
You mean
Kuwait,
the slaves?
The slaves. Who came from Bangladesh.
That's not what I've read. I've read investigations that say that a good proportion of those slaves were actually kidnapped in other countries and brought to Qatar.
Forget. No, don't start. It is totally wrong. They bring in people who can work. And they...
I didn't say otherwise. What I said was that they had been kidnapped in other countries.
I've never heard about this.
Oh, yeah. This is
never heard about kidnapping.
Well, it's widely asserted.
What happened is, when they come, their passports are confiscated until they leave.
That's also asserted. So there are two ways to bring them into Qatar. One is to kidnap
Qatar, don't forget, those who were working in the preparations for the World Cup in 2022, many of them died because of the heat, which they were forced to work. I don't deny. Yet, workers from Bangladesh, from Thailand, from wherever they come, Indonesia, Malaysia, they come, they know exactly, or almost exactly, that they are coming for money. They're coming to work year, 2, 3 years, and to take the money and go home.
But they can't go home.
No. When they go home, they get back the passport. Because
that's not true. Some of them have their passports removed and they never get them back. And when their employers don't think they need them anymore, they're thrown into the streets. This is according to the State Department's own investigations.
You're definitely right. And the world should call them to order. The problem is that since everybody is addicted to the oil or to the gas, which comes from these countries, politicians are very reluctant.
Okay, but that's a separate problem. What I'm asking is, if that's a successful Arab state, I would be scared to have anything resembling Qatar in an emirate for the Arab
situation here is totally different.
Okay.
Don't forget that what you call slavery. The foreign workers came initially to work in the oil industry. To work in oil. Here they don't have oil. Here they want their own people to work. In quarries, they work in the stone industry, in the wood industry, leather industry, like in Hebron, and many other industries, including high tech. They are not looking for the foreign workers here in the Emirates.
Okay, but what about the Arab Palestinians themselves? Because my worry would be these people, the Arab Palestinians, have had their psychology destroyed. They've been governed by genocidal terrorist organizations, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, which is really Pilo Fatah, right? So they've been run by Hamas and Pilo Fatah, both of them genocidal terrorist organizations.
No doubt.
And therefore, the psychology of the Arab Palestinians has been destroyed because, as you well know, from an early age in school, they are taught that they have to kill Jews, that the highest aspiration is to become a shaheed. So it seems to me that if tomorrow Israel wins the war and there has to be some kind of solution like the one you propose for how to get along with the Arab Palestinians, if it is an autonomous government solution, whatever it is, even if it's the Emirates solution, the worry that I would have is that since these people have been poisoned, they have been turned by the education system of Hamas and the PA into genocidal anti-Semites. If they're allowed to govern themselves, then their institutions will repeat that kind of education.
No, not at all. Why? No. The PA, which doesn't resemble the people, tried to build its legitimacy on the hatred to Israel. This is the way how to create legitimacy, because they don't have any legitimacy, because they are criminals who Israel brought, unfortunately, from Tunisia. What I'm talking about is the local clans. They are legitimate rulers for themselves. They don't look for enemies. They don't need enemies because they are legitimate.
So the local clans don't want to kill Jews?
The local clans, when they are depending on Israel to export and to import because they don't have access to the sea, when they have to use the Israeli airport because they cannot have airport in their place because of the hilly area, when they have to go to Jordan through Israel, when we are depending on Israel for everything, they will behave. Because Israel will be there in order to demand, hey guys, you want access to Ashdod?
So you don't think
harbor? You better change your school books.
Right. So you don't think that these people need to be deprogrammed from their genocidal ideology, like it was proposed that the Nazis should be deprogrammed after World War II?
When they have their own leadership, the sheikhs, the old people who are, sheikh is not old, but the leaders, the local leaders. Who will work with us because they don't have any other access to anywhere without Israel, they will have to change the message, to change the media, to change the school books, to change everything. Because otherwise, hey guys, you want access to the sea, to harbor, to Ashdod or to Haifa harbor, you want to Ben Gurion airport, okay, you change this, you change this.
Okay.
And all the hoses which they bring in will be of plastic.
In other words, the analysis you're recommending is that since they would lose the government over them, they would be forced to deal with the Israeli state, and therefore having autonomy after Israel wins the war would not endanger the state of Israel.
Yes.
That's your belief. Okay, let's talk about Qatar.
So believe this what is already. Because I am in connection with some clans already in the beginning of this work, but I won't elaborate it.
Okay, but so you've been receiving some communication from the heads of the clans, and you're not worried about the principle of taqiyya.
Not at all.
You think they're telling you the truth?
Look, in Arabic you say, the one who will marry my mother, I will call him father. Means whoever takes over and is the powerful side, I will have no other choice but to obey him.
Okay, now I want to ask you a question about Qatar. Let's go back to Qatar. So, Qatar is the big patron of Hamas in addition to Iran. So, it seems to me that it is fair to say that when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, this was Qatar attacking Israel on October 7th.
No doubt.
Do you agree?
Of course.
Okay. Now,
but the problem is...
Wait, I want to get to the question. Yeah. So it seems to be that Qatar attacked Israel from behind an American shield.
No doubt.
Because the United States has its most important military base in North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia in Qatar. That's CENTCOM
Udeid.
headquarters. Al Udeid base, exactly. CENTCOM headquarters. So the fact that that gigantic U.S. military base is in Qatar means that Qatar feels safe attacking Israel, because for Israel to attack Qatar, they would have to get permission from the United States.
Well,
Qatar attacked from behind an American shield.
The Qataris are geniuses. They succeeded to hold the stick in both sides. Means to be friends and enemies of everybody. I'll give you a good example. In 2003, in the invasion of Iraq, which came from Kuwait, the Al Jazeera channel, which operates from Qatar,
yes, of course,
called upon the Iraqis to catch the Americans and to slaughter them. So the then Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld, when he heard it, he told his people, go bomb Al Jazeera. So they told him, well, Al Jazeera is right next to our base, Al Udeid in Qatar. He didn't know that Al Jazeera broadcasts from Qatar. Means Qatar, at the same time, they host the American Udeid airport, air base, and they call upon the Iraqis to slaughter the Americans at the same time. Okay? This is what I mean. This is how these snakes of Qatar know how to play both sides in everything.
You have a very interesting model of Qatar. Let me ask you a question. So how long do you think it would take for the Americans to conquer Qatar? How many hours?
2.
2 hours? 2 hours coming out of Al Udeid base to conquer Qatar?
1 hour.
Wow. But you don't really think the U.S. is afraid of Qatar, do you?
The Saudi Arabia already, one of the officials there said that when we will conquer Qatar, we will not need tanks. We will send the jeeps.
Okay, so
only the jeeps.
That sounds to me like if Qatar is doing anything, it must be American policy, because the U.S. can so easily remove the government of Qatar that they should be able to shape Qatar's foreign policy.
Look, let me tell you something. Some 12 years ago, when Qatar was behind the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Morsi, if you remember, was the president for 1 year between mid-2012 and 2013. Qatar was behind him. And the then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, once was asked, how come you support a terrorist or violent group like the Muslim Brotherhood? So she answered something like, our Qatari friends keep telling us that the Muslim Brotherhood is a friendly organization, peaceful organization. Well, apparently she didn't do the first lesson of political science. In the political science, in the first lesson you learn how to analyze an organization, you look at the emblem of the organization. Because the emblem usually tells a lot about the organization. If it has a cross, it belongs to the church or the Christian. If it has a David star, it will be Jewish. It will, if it has, the ways, it's a judicial something, If it has the snake and the plate, it will be something connected to medicine. Okay, there are meaning. It means, the emblem means something. So you look at the emblem before you start analyzing the organization.
Yeah.
The Muslim Brotherhood emblem is 2 swords, a book, and 1 word. The 2 swords, of course, one is the hugs and the other is the kisses. Okay? 2 swords. The book is the Quran, of course, and the 1 word is wa'iddu in Arabic. Wa'iddu means and prepare. To prepare breakfast, lunch. This word appears in the Quran only 1 time. And if you look at the Quran, which appears also on the emblem, it opens a verse which says, and prepare against them, means against the infidels, whatever you have from power and bound horses to strike terror into the hearts of your enemies and the enemies of Allah. This is the verse in the Quran. Means already the emblem tells you to strike terror into the hearts of the infidels with two swords. Now, these swords are curved, are not straight.
They're scimitars.
Right. You cannot stab anybody with such a sword because it will break.
You can only cut their heads off.
Or they cut the head. Means already the emblem of the Muslim Brotherhood tells you that this is not so friendly and not so peaceful organization. Apparently, Hillary Clinton didn't do the first lessons homework how to analyze an organization based on its emblem. Okay? Because if she did, she wouldn't say such a nonsense. However, our Qatari friends keep telling us. Now, what Qatar? Look at the Clinton Foundation, who sponsors the Clinton Foundation, and you get the answer. Who are the sponsors?
Qatar.
Of course.
But then that suggests that Hillary Clinton is not an idiot. She is corrupt. It's a different explanation.
It means that Qatar has bought.
Right, that's called corruption. So it's not that she doesn't understand and that she doesn't study the emblem. It's that she has a corrupt relationship with Qatar. These are different models.
Another good example is what happened, with the workers which you mentioned. Those who were working in the construction sites of Qatar prior to the World Cup games. It was 2020, 2021. Those workers were forced to work along the day. In the summer, in Qatar, the 50 centigrade in the shade in the summer. If somebody works outside in such a temperature, you die, even if you are healthy. And many of those workers were dying like flies. So there was a report issued by the human rights organizations, and the European Union wanted to discuss this report. However, there was, I think, the lady named Kali. She was from Greece. She was the deputy minister of foreign affairs of the European Union, as much as I remember. I'm not sure. And she did everything possible to prevent any discussion in the European Union's institution in Brussels against Qatar. So somebody started to suspect. They went into her home and they found boxes of cash money. They asked her what this is. So she said, I don't know. Her father said it comes from the Qatari embassy. Okay? This is how Qatar buys the silence of the world when it comes to all kinds of behavior.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you what your explanation for this is, because Qatar attacked Israel on October 7th.
Through Hamas.
The attack through Hamas. The attack was the most horrific attack imaginable. So my question is, since, in your opinion, in your learned opinion, the United States could conquer Qatar inside of 1 hour, just come out of Al-Udeid and take it over, why didn't the U.S. do this after the October 7th attack? Why didn't they just conquer Qatar and get rid of the problem?
Look, the world...
it takes 1 hour. You said 1 hour. Seems cheap to do. Very cheap.
Maybe not even. Look, the world doesn't do this connection between Hamas and Qatar.
I'm not talking about
because
the world. I'm talking about the U.S. bosses.
Okay, for this you have to ask Mr. Biden and his...
But what do you think? What do you think explains the fact...
I think is the way how the world works.
Okay.
Look, Iran.
That's what I'm asking.
Iran is well known to operate the proxies in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Hamas, in Gaza, and in Yemen. Everybody knows that the missiles which the Houthis are blocking the world traffic in the Red Sea, made in Iran. Why doesn't the world give Iran the bill?
Right, but I'm not talking about the world, and I'm not talking about Iran. I'm asking.
No, this is how the world
why,
works.
if it takes 1 hour, I mean, so the reason I'm asking about Qatar is because, in your opinion, it is the easiest, cheapest thing in the world to conquer Qatar from Al-Udeid.
You don't have to conquer, but you have to threaten them that you will cut their ties to SWIFT. SWIFT is the global money transfer.
Why not conquer them? If it's going to take an hour...
No, why conquer? Just convince them.
I'll tell you why conquer them, because you can't trust them They're jihadis.
I'm for it.
And they will find other ways.
I'm totally for it. The problem is,
Yeah, but why didn't they do it? Because this is the great financier of international jihadi terrorism. And they are intimate allies of the United
if you
States.
want, I can give you the phone number of the White House or the phone.
No, but I want to know your theory.
Because the world does not give the bill to countries which sponsor terror. They only give the bill to the terrorists themselves.
That's not true. When
Iran was punished because of Hezbollah.
Yes, but hold on. The argument that was used to attack Iraq is that Iraq was sponsoring terror. That was the argument.
1983.
The argument to attack Afghanistan was that Afghanistan was sponsoring terror. And George Bush Jr. said, if you're harboring terrorists, we will consider you a terrorist. So that argument has been used.
But for this, you need a normal president.
Against Qatar.
But for this, you need a normal president like George W. Bush. Now, let's look at the.
Well, why do you think Trump is a normal president? Wait, is Trump a normal president?
42 years ago, in 1983, a bomb exploded in Obama, bombed car, was exploded near the American headquarters of the Marines in Beirut.
Yes.
This was carried out by Hezbollah.
Yes.
One of the first actions. Everybody knew that Iran is behind it. Mm-hmm. Why didn't America, who was hit?
What's your hypothesis?
I have no idea.
Well, one hypothesis is because, in fact, the United States government, the U.S. bosses, are not enemies of Iran. One reason for thinking that is that in the middle of the 1980s, we found out that the American president was sending in secret billions of dollars in armament to the Iranian terrorists. It's called the Iran-Contra affair.
And then Obama sent these two airplanes with
That's
money.
right. That's right. Obama sent additional money.
2015, after the signing of the nuclear agreement.
Right.
Okay.
So one hypothesis would be the reason Iran never gets attacked by the U.S. government is that, in fact, the U.S. government has a policy to strengthen Iran.
Another reason could be, and this might be connected to this, is the constant Iranian threat to hit the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait if Iran is hit. Means this is a whip which Iran is holding in order to punish the Western world. You know what will happen to prices of gas in the pump in Nebraska if Iran attacks Saudi Arabia?
Well, but I think you're getting scared by a paper tiger, because what we just saw a few weeks ago is that the Israeli military has the power to destroy Iran's air defenses without losing a single jet fighter.
What?
So it's not that hard. Iran is not that scary.
Well,
so the question is, why not take them out?
Look, I think that the world actually believes more in deterrence and convincing them, while the Iranians obey the world only when they feel a credible threat.
Okay, but putting your biggest military base in Qatar, Al Udeid, that's not the same thing as deterrence. That's an alliance. In fact, what that base in Qatar says is that Israel may not attack Qatar, but Qatar may attack Israel.
Of course.
Well, that sounds...
This is the Qatari way
that looks
to buy everybody.
Right, so that looks to me like an anti-Israeli U.S. policy. The U.S. has become the shield behind which Qatar attacks Israel.
Look, I'm not running, and Israel is not running the American foreign policy. The Americans, they know what their interests are.
But do you think it's unfair to say that the U.S. has a policy to attack Israel?
No.
Is that unfair?
What I can say is that the American policy or foreign policy doesn't always fits the Israeli interests.
Does it ever?
Oh, of course.
Really? So would you consider bringing...
Most of the time, most of the cases.
Most of the time. Okay, so I think that the most important policy of the United States towards Israel is, in fact, the Oslo Accords. That's the most important one. No, that is totally anti-Israeli.
Don't forget that the Oslo Accords were initiated by Israelis.
The Oslo Accords were initiated...
Peres and Begin and the...
I disagree with you, Mordechai. I disagree with you.
No. The Americans were very deep in the Madrid process.
That's where it all began. That's where it all began, Mordechai.
Now, if you really look at the two processes, were in parallel, and the Oslo process were actually in order to circumvent and to go around the Madrid process.
Look,
the Madrid process was meant to come to some kind of solution between Israel and Palestinians through all kinds of groups of countries which were part of these discussions, and this was the path. Why did they want to Oslo? Norway, in order to stay as far as could be, far as possible from the cameras, from the media, until they cook the whole thing, in order to bring another solution by not walking on the way which Madrid.
Okay, but let me offer you a different analysis, see what you think. I believe that the Oslo Accords are impossible without Madrid. Why? Because before Madrid, there was a hard and fast taboo in Israeli politics against any kind of negotiation with PLO Fatah. So
because the right was in government. Yitzhak Shamir was the prime minister.
Well, Yitzhak Shamir is the one who went to Madrid, so bear with me for a second.
Yeah, but that's why he didn't agree to have any Palestinian independent representation in this conference. He insisted on having the Palestinians within the Jordanian delegation, and he succeeded.
But listen to what you just said. He didn't want the Palestinians to be negotiating directly. He wanted the pretense of negotiating with the Jordanians, but everybody understood he was actually negotiating with the Palestinians.
Of course.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Okay. You say, of course. What I say is the Oslo Accords cannot even begin to be negotiated without Madrid, because Madrid is the moment the overtone window was moved. Before Madrid, it was a taboo of Israeli politics to negotiate with PLO Fatah. After Madrid, the negotiations had already begun. That's what moved the overtone window. So wait. Hold on. So even if you say that the Oslo Accords are not exactly the same thing that was being negotiated in Madrid, fine, but it's still impossible to get to the Oslo Accords without first breaking the taboo, and that happened in Madrid.
Okay, let me just correct you a little bit. The first crack in the dam happened in 1978. Madrid was 1991.
Okay.
78 in the agreements between Israel and Egypt in Camp David in the United States. After all, we signed with the Egyptians two agreements. One is about the framework for peace between Israel and Egypt. And the other one is about the Palestinian thing. Already Menachem Begin, who definitely was the right-wing leader, he unfortunately succumbed to the pressure of Sadat also to agree to a Palestinian autonomy. And this was the first time which the Palestinian issue got any kind of consent by the Israel, and it was as early as 1978.
I agree with you.
So Shamir, from the right as well, who was Begin's very good friend, he said, okay, we are in a situation where an autonomy is already accepted by Israel, and in order to deal with the details of this thing in Madrid, okay, let them have a representation, but with Jordan, not as independent delegation. Okay, so the first to break the taboo was Begin.
Okay, but hold on, because you yourself agree that the idea of autonomy for the Arab Palestinians and negotiating with PLO Fatah is not the same thing, because you want Emirates-based autonomy without PLO Fatah. You want it with the clans. So the fact that Menachem Begin was speaking about autonomy in 1978 does not mean he had agreed to negotiate with PLO Fatah. Autonomy for the Arab Palestinians is one thing, and negotiating with PLO Fatah is another. And the place where the taboo against negotiating with PLO Fatah was violated, that's Madrid, 1991, and the guy who did it was Benjamin Netanyahu. He was the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs that traveled with Yitzhak Shamir to Madrid. He was the most senior functionary in the Israeli government dealing with foreign affairs. He was the one responsible for violating the taboo against negotiations with PLO Fatah.
Look, I have a lot of criticism about Netanyahu and his policies through the years. The man was for the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza in 2005.
That's correct.
If you really want to discuss the Netanyahu policies along the years, we definitely have to find, we can open a whole discussion about this. If I can define Netanyahu's behavior, political behavior vis-a-vis the Arabs, I would define it as a policy of what is possible. He is much more pragmatic than ideologist. If he was, Shamir was ideologist. For him, he has an idea, he would move anything, not even sentiment from this idea, because he was ideologue. Netanyahu's policies is much more adjustable to the situation. He looks at the situation and adjusts his ideas, and his ideas were a great idea. He actually wrote a whole book about a place under the sun, a book which he wrote.
A place among the nations, I think.
In Hebrew, it's a place under,
really?
under the sun. In Hebrew, I don't know what the name of the book
maybe you're
English.
right. Yeah.
And maybe this is the translation.
Yep.
He wrote a very, very ideologic book. Yet, when it comes to implementation, he's much more. His policies are much more reflecting with or coexisting with the changing situations in the world. Okay, he's much less dogmatic, much less ideologist, and much more pragmatic.
Can I ask you a question about that? So it seems to me that the way that Netanyahu adapts and instantiates his practical nature, as you describe it, is that when he is running for office, he very loudly claims that he will cancel Oslo, and then when he is elected, he immediately cooperates with the Oslo process and sometimes pushes it even faster than Israeli bosses on the left.
No, he was forced, first of all, by Clinton to give up on all kinds of things in Judea and Samaria.
Well, then let me ask you about that. So I've heard this many times from people on the right in Israel. People say that Israeli prime ministers are forced by American presidents to do X or Y. I have trouble understanding that language because I think if an Israeli prime minister doesn't want to do something, he can refuse to do it. How is it that American presidents force Israeli prime ministers to do things that are against the interests of Israeli Jews?
Well, unfortunately, Israel depends too much on the United States of America, on all kinds of levels. On the international level, we need them in the United Nations. We need them support vis-a-vis the Europeans, sometimes vis-a-vis the Arab world. We need them in all kinds of circles like human rights, Council of the United Nations, and many other things.
But the United States, as we just said, is the shield behind which Qatar attacked Israel on October 7th.
So the United States juggles between Israel and its enemies sometimes, and it's not so easy.
But if the United States can force an Israeli prime minister to do things that are radically against the security interests of Israeli Jews. Wait. If an American president can do that to an Israeli prime minister, why can't they do that to the Emir of Qatar? Why can't they force the Emir of Qatar?
You have to ask the Americans. The Americans, sometimes really, I cannot decipher the American thinking in too many cases. How come they don't see the problem which Israel sees?
But maybe they do see it. Maybe they're your enemies.
I wouldn't define America as an enemy in any way.
Why not?
Form.
Why, if the behaviors are the behaviors of an enemy, if they have an intimate alliance with the jihadi state that wants to commit genocide in Israel, and they become the shield behind which Qatar attacks Israel with genocide, why wouldn't you call? If they bring PLO Fatah into Israel, because that's what they did. They organized the Oslo process to bring PLO Fatah into Israel, which is the worst thing that ever happened to Israel. Why wouldn't you call them enemies?
Look, even the moon has two sides. The lit part, half actually, and the dark one.
So maybe Iran is a friend?
The dark is very dark, while the lit has a very lot of light. The same thing is American policy vis-a-vis Israel. Sometimes, in some aspects, it's very good. Some aspects are problematic. And it's take it or leave it. This is America. We are not American citizens. We never vote for American president or whatever. And we have to accept it. And we do have open, usually, we do have open gates in Washington to present our position and our kind of thinking. And in most cases, Americans listen. And sometimes they maintain pressure on us, like what happened during the war when they halted all kinds of ammunition not to give us. Because of pressure from the Congress, from the squad in the Congress and others. They prevented all kinds of Israeli attacks on Gaza and Iran and other places. And then...
Seems to me this is the behavior of an enemy.
No, this is a behavior of a friend who has his own agenda.
If a friend has an agenda that is aligned with your enemies, how is that still a friend?
Again, I'm not in a situation to ask why did Blinken or Biden side with Qatar. They have their own accounts with Qatar, I think. Maybe something like what Clinton has with Qatar. I have no idea what Qatar sponsors in the last administration.
It sounds like you're making my case for me. It sounds like you're saying they are friends with Qatar and therefore they are your enemies.
Look, there are all kinds of rumors that Qatar also is connected with people in Trump's administration as well. So the Qataris, as I told you, they are very bright people. They know how to buy people on right, left, and center. And they invest, since they have unlimited piles of money, they can oil everybody.
Okay, if your model is that Qatar has corrupted the U.S. government, then it seems to me that your model is that the U.S. government is your enemy because of Qatari corruption, but they're still your enemy.
What I'm saying is that America, as the best friend of Israel, sometimes behaves in a way which reflects America's interests with Qatar rather than America's interest with Israel. And the Americans are, they know their way. And we try to have the best out of it. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't.
It seems to me you're a much better friend of the United States than the United States.
No, what I'm saying is that Israel, unfortunately, and I emphasize unfortunately, is too much depending on the United States. We should have made more variable set of friends.
So would you be in favor of an Israeli policy for complete independence in armaments so you don't have to depend from an American president that may or may not want to send you weapons?
Well, as much as I would like to say yes, we have a problem. I think every country in the world has a problem, especially with jet engines. Jet engines need very, very special industry, big industry. The United States has it. Not even every country in Europe has it.
Are you saying it's impossible for Israelis to do anything?
Israel did not develop the aircraft industries in a way which can make us independent.
Isn't there an entirely Israeli-made jet aircraft fighter?
The Lavi.
Well, then Israel can do it. They already proved it.
Of course we can do it.
So it seems to me
but even
you just need to decide to be independent.
Even the Lavi, which was based on the French Mirage, the engine was American.
Right, but you could decide to make them here.
I'm for it.
Okay.
I'm for it. The question is, investment vis-a-vis selling, in order to...
I think that if Israelis made their own jet aircraft, they would probably be selling them around the world. I think you would make very high quality jet aircraft. You know why? Because everything that Israelis make is first rate.
Thank you so much. But to start to compete with Boeing and Lockheed Martin, and
but the main reason is not to compete. The main reason is to have
competition.
Right, but that's not
money makes the world go round.
Fine, but the main reason is that you shouldn't be dependent on the whims of the current American president.
What we should have done is to open gates with the Russians maybe, or maybe with the Chinese, to show the American administrations, in plural, that we have alternatives. Either you with us, or we can have an alternative, Chinese weapons or Russian. Maybe they are not in the level of the American ones, yet they are not. They are good.
But if anybody announced a policy for total armaments independence, you would be in favor of that?
Of course. The only question is what economic price it has, because to start to compete with America is not easy. When they can lower prices.
Sure, but it seems to me that the most important thing is not to pay a little instead of a lot. The most important thing is to make sure that Israeli Jews cannot be killed. And therefore, if it's a little bit more expensive to have your own armaments industry, that still makes security sense.
There's something which is much more simple than airplanes. Tractors. Mm-hmm. We need them, now, especially now in the war with Gaza. We found out that the D9 Caterpillar tractors are essential. Essential.
Make your own.
Oh, this is way much more simple than to produce an airplane with all its details and especially the engine.
Then there's even less of an excuse not to make your own.
I don't see Israel starts to compete with Caterpillar.
But again, I think this is a very important point. I am not talking about competing successfully with Caterpillar. What I'm talking about is a policy that will make Israeli Jews safe. So if it's more expensive to make the tractors in Israel than to buy them from Caterpillar, it still makes sense if that's going to buy you security.
Well, apparently the Israeli government goes to another path, which says if we have good alliance with America, with Western Europe, which will be a constant supply of weapons. This might save lives here in Israel by deterrence because we have such a good network of supporters all over the world.
We have seen how well that argument works because what has in fact happened
for this you
is
need
that
good intelligence.
Qatar attacked you from behind an American shield. So it seems to me that the strategy that the Israeli bosses have followed is perhaps not the best.
This is one of the flows of October 7th, definitely, including others, which are not connected to the Americans.
Mordechai, they're telling me that we're out of time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope it's not the last and that we will have a chance to talk again. Thank you, Mordechai Kedar. This is Francisco Gil-White for Management of Reality and Arutz Tov. Remember, you can find all of our content, Management of Reality content at managementofreality.com or franciscogilwhite.com. Takes you to the same place. You'll find videos, articles, books, all kinds of content useful to understand world geopolitics, Israeli politics, U.S. politics, and the current state of the fight for the future of Western civilization. Thank you very much.